It's always Putin who sets up the red lines for the West. It's not the West who tells Putin, if you do this, we're going to put extra sanctions on you. Right now, there is a great bill in Senate that has been registered by the Republicans, by Senator Lindsey Graham, that actually introduces secondary sanctions, meaning that if there is any other country trading with Russians, it's going to be 500% sanctions, like basically put up on them, which would make it impossible for big countries like India, for example, to buy oil from Russia, what they had been doing supporting their economy.
Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said Ukraine will host a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing tomorrow in Kyiv. Well, Moscow has held today its biggest World War II Victory Day parade for years today. Almost 30 global leaders, including China's Xi Jinping, turned up. They sat next to each other, in fact. Well, the Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that starting yesterday, there would be a 3-day ceasefire to coincide with the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Despite this, the Ukrainian military has already reported 80 attacks by Russian troops along the front line today. Oleksandra Ustinova is a member of Ukraine's parliament and is chair of the Committee on Arms Control. Oleksandra, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Shall we start with this supposed ceasefire? Zelensky made it clear that Ukraine would not be honouring the 3-day ceasefire, saying they'd got a negotiation, a proposal on the table for a 30-day ceasefire. Anything that wasn't that was just PR. It was total nonsense.
So President Zelensky, on behalf of the Ukrainian people, has always been clear. We are ready for the ceasefire. Not a 1-day ceasefire, not a 3-day ceasefire. We actually are ready for a full ceasefire for as long as it's needed, but at least 30 days to try. And you see on the Russian side, they're always basically lying to the world, saying, yes, we are ready, but when it comes to the actual ceasefire, they start coming up with some energy ceasefire, and then having an energy ceasefire, they just shoot our children with ballistic missiles when we have almost 20 children die at the playground when the ballistic missile came there. Well, of course, it wasn't an energy object, obviously, but it was our children who had been killed. So Putin is a bully, and as long as the world lets him do whatever he wants to do, and that's what we witness right now, he will continue doing that, saying, yes, I'm ready for the ceasefire, but actually never doing that.
At this display of Putin's, its attempt to show his military might to the Russian people, but also to the rest of the world today, he had alongside him, sitting next to him, China's President Xi Jinping. Also there, Brazil's Lula da Silva, the Slovak Prime Minister, Robert Fico, the only EU leader who decided to attend. What does it mean to you when you watch Putin put on that display, in some senses a grotesque display of the weapons that he's been using against Ukrainians, and those people are prepared to sit alongside him?
Well, obviously the world is divided, and you can see the evil sitting today in Kremlin and supporting Putin in this masquerade that is going on. And on the other side, you see that there will be a big coalition tomorrow in Kyiv of the leaders of the free world, of the free countries who are going to show up to support Ukraine. I'm here today at London Defense Conference, and I can tell you that that's where normal people are that are discussing how to end the war, how to end the killing of civilians, but not how to actually demonstrate the strength among the countries who are torturing journalists to death, who are killing children, who are raping our women. And this is just two different worlds that are facing each other, and it depending on which part wins, that's what the future of the world is going to be.
What is your expectation from this meeting tomorrow? Because the ambitions and the aims of the Coalition of the Willing has shifted a little since it was first created by Britain and France. In the best case scenario, what is the kind of commitment that you're hoping for?
So we do hope for the commitment to continue to support Ukraine, and not just to support Ukraine to sustain this war, but to defeat Russia and to win this war. We do hope for the commitment that Ukraine cannot give up any of the territories, meaning to give up people and their lives. And we do hope that there will be a commitment to provide more weapons, to ramp up the production lines, because It's been more than 3 years after the full-scale invasion, and actually 11 years of the war. And all we hear so far from the foreign leaders, from the Western leaders, is we need to ramp up the production, we need to be ready for the war. But we see that this is being done very slowly because of the bureaucracy and because the defense industry was actually built for the peaceful time, not for the wartime. So we do hope that there will be a commitment to actually do more, to invest more in the defense, and to protect not only Ukraine, sending the weapons there, but actually to be ready for the war if Putin decides to invade one of the NATO countries next.
That's very much about the now. The Coalition of the Willing are also putting in plans for if and when there's a ceasefire, but there are many caveats. And I wonder how much faith you have in the proposals they're putting forward, because it could be some kind of European peacekeeping force. Britain have sort of slightly swayed back and forth about whether that would actually mean troops on the ground and in what capacity. But a lot of it is hinged on Donald Trump's decisions, if they're prepared to provide the US a security guarantee in some form. And it looks like the US are unwilling to do that and see instead that the minerals deal signed with Ukraine last week sort of works in its place. How confident are you that if there is a ceasefire, you get the response and support that you are hoping from this coalition?
I don't believe in a ceasefire unless Putin gets a punch first. He's a bully, and he cannot be negotiated. And if you see so far, the Western countries are trying to negotiate him, believing that he's going to keep his word. He's never going to do that. And he made it clear that there will be no ceasefire, even if he declares one. Unfortunately, it's always Putin who sets up the red lines for the West. It's not the West who tells Putin, if you do this, we're going to put extra sanctions on you. Right now, there is a great bill in Senate that has been registered by the Republicans, by Senator Lindsey Graham, that actually introduces secondary sanctions, meaning that if there is any other country trading with Russians, it's going to be 500% sanctions, like basically put up on them, which would make it impossible for big countries like India, for example, to buy oil from Russia, what they had been doing supporting their economy. And we understand that unless Putin gets a punch and gets something first.
What do you mean by that? What do you imagine he might do?
So if you introduce sanctions first, that he feels that and he understands what's going to go after that, then it would be easier to negotiate him. So if you remember, since day one of war, Putin has been bullying the world that if you do this, if you support Ukraine with these types of weapons or these types of weapons, I'm going to use the nuclear weapons. He never did that. And actually, about 6 or 7 months after he started that, he shut up and he never mentions that because he understood this is not working anymore. My question is why the Western countries do not tell him, okay, we're going to give Ukraine an additional 100 jets. I can tell you there are only 20 jets in Ukraine right now defending our air. Just to compare, there are almost 4,000 jets only in the U.S. Navy. I'm not talking about the Air Force, only in the Navy. So if we had at least 10% of what the countries have. If we had been provided additional air defense to protect our civilians and, more important, additional missiles to hit the precise targets, to hit the oil depots, to hit the air bases that they're launching the Shaheeds and the missiles at our civilian cities, that would be a completely different conversation. Even Ukrainian doing the Kursk operation changed the paradigm because we punched him first and then we put him to negotiations.
The UK Prime Minister has made it very clear. He'll say Ukraine has our steadfast, unwavering support anytime he talks about this. Yet, some of the sort of political backdrop for him, we saw just yesterday, the Defence Secretary was talking here about how Europe's borders are being rewritten, redrawn on that anniversary of VE Day yesterday. But only a third of the British public here are in support of an increased defence spend. And so that is therefore the political challenges that Western leaders who want to support Ukraine are facing.
The problem we're facing right now is everybody in every country who supports Ukraine needs to understand and wants to see what is the exit plan, what is the end game, and what Ukraine actually needs to win this war. And Ukrainians had been very clear. We need these types of weapons in this amount. And if we had all of the weapons we have now in Ukraine in 2022, this war would be over. The problem is there's always been a delay between all of the leaders of the Western world saying, oh, this is going to be an escalation, or we don't have enough, which basically did not allow Ukraine to show the victory that it could have done. If you remember the first counteroffensive, it was very successful, but after that, everybody got scared that Putin is going to be pissed off, use the nukes or something else, and a lot of the weapon supplies were stopped. Instead of giving Ukrainians more to actually defeat Russians, to put them back on their territories and put a strong air defense system to protect us, we continue this bloody war, losing thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And the West is saying, oh, how much is it going to cost for us next year and then the year after? If you put it once to do enough for Ukraine, this war would be over. If you don't, it's going to be a big war in Europe that is going to cost not only money for you, but lives.
That's the pitch that I'm sure is going to be made again tomorrow at that Coalition of the Willing meeting in Kyiv. Oleksandra Ustinova, thank you very much for speaking to us, a member of Ukraine's parliament and chair of the Committee on Arms Control.